All right, I guess we will get started. We're still missing a couple of people, but we do have a quorum, so I guess we'll get moving. Welcome everybody to the ARPA Advisory Committee meeting for Tuesday, September 19th, 2023. As always, meetings of the ARPA Advisory Transformational Committee are public meetings as defined by the Connecticut Freedom of Information Act and should follow these guidelines. As this public meeting is held virtually, it will be recorded and made available to view on the DDS website. Committee members must make a good faith effort to state their name and title if applicable each time they speak during the meeting. If a committee member would like to speak, please raise your hand and one of the co-chairs will acknowledge you. There is no public comment portion to this meeting. Members of the public are able to join, watch, and listen only. And I am Keith Lavalette from DDS. Next, I had sent the minutes out for the 7/18 meeting. Is there any questions, concerns with the minutes? If not, could I have someone make a motion?
So moved.
Second.
So that's Shannon and Tracy?
Yep.
All in favor? Any opposed? All right, the minutes passed. Peter, before we get into Lauren, I just realized that both Gunnar and Mary Pat are on. Did you want to introduce them here or?
Sure. We'll start with Gunnar. Gunnar is coming in. He is going to be he's working with me, and when I retire in December, he will be then taking over overseeing the STEP initiative. So welcome, Gunnar. We're looking forward to having you, and I think you're going to do a great job. You want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Thanks, Peter. Good afternoon, everyone. I do recognize some of the folks on the call. As Peter said, my name is Gunnar Abrahamson. I've been with DDS for a little over 2 years. I have the unique opportunity over the next 4 months to train alongside Peter, our former Deputy Commissioner, Keith Lavalette, and our former IFS South Region Director, Greg McMahon. The goal there is really to get me up to speed on all things ARPA and STEP. So a lot of work to do. I have some big shoes to fill, but I'm excited to kind of get this process moving. So good to be on the call and good to see everyone. Thanks, Peter.
Yep. This is Peter Mason. We're glad to have you. And then someone who should be familiar to everybody, Mary Pat DiCarlo, who, as they say in the trade, has gone over to the dark side and is now working with DDS as to help in a variety of things. And I'll let her explain what she's coming here for.
Hi, everybody. My main focus is going to be on workforce development for both the private sector and the state, but more so the private. And then I'm also going to be helping out wherever I can in regards to the ARPA and STEP programs. So a little bit of everything. But yeah, I'm just getting started. Only been a few weeks, so we'll see what happens.
Welcome aboard. Back to you, Keith.
All right, thanks. This is Keith Lavalette at DDS. I did have to switch up the advisory meeting agenda. Lauren Gray is on, and she can only stay for the first part of the meeting, so I moved her to the front of the meeting. So Lauren, would you like to present on the communication?
Yes, good afternoon. This is Lauren Gray from DDS. I am keeping my camera off. I have a slight cold, so I'm a little sniffly and I look terrible. So I'm keeping my camera off. Thank you for understanding. And if you hear me sneeze, I am sorry. but again, this is Lauren Gray from DDS. I'm going to share my screen for a couple of DDS updates in regards to STEP and other initiatives that we are working on. First, I know we've been communicating about STEP a whole lot, but we do have the community forums coming up with the commissioner and the deputy commissioner. These are the annual update community forums that will be focused on some STEP updates, but largely a big portion of this will be Q&A at each one. We would love people to join, give feedback, and come and ask questions at any of these forums. They are at 2 different days at 4 different times. So we're really hoping people will attend these, ask questions, give feedback, and hear more about what we have been up to. So please don't forget about these. All of the information is here on the DDS website. If you are on the home page, it's the first option here for the fall virtual forums. So please don't forget to continue to share this around, and we hope to have good attendance here. I know next year we're looking at getting the commissioner back out there again, but for now we are keeping these virtual. Any questions about this so far? Okay. I actually can't see if anybody has their hands up. So Keith, if anybody does raise their hand, just tell me. Also in October, you're going to see DDS participate in National Disability Employment Awareness Month. This is a national initiative from the U.S. Department of Labor, and we are looking forward to participating. You'll see us posting on social media and sending out emails with the hashtag NDEAM, and we are relating this back to STEP in many ways because we have a themed week each week. The first week will be self-direction, and we'll be launching our self-direction video as a part of the STEP video series during this month, and posting different things and participating in different initiatives as a part of National Disability Employment Awareness Month. So stay tuned for that. And as you just heard me talk about, we have launched the first videos in our STEP video series. If you haven't had a chance to see them, I highly encourage you to go watch them, share them. They're extremely good. We've gotten really good feedback about, how touching they are. And, we've even had some people inquire about learning more. But if you're on the STEP website, which is ct.gov/STEP, and you click on the first 2, individualized home supports, you can see the YouTube links in English and in Spanish here. And you can also find them on our social media. We've boosted the post on Facebook, so you can see the series here. And you can see on our newly redone YouTube page, you can find the STEP video series playlist where all of the videos will live on our YouTube channel, and they'll continue to stay there as well. And again, on the next
Excuse
video,
me, Lauren.
Yeah.
Me, Lauren. Can you show the supported housing one?
Oh yeah,
Can you run that?
yeah. Let me unshare and share with sound really quick, so that the sound works appropriately.
Their premium version really takes things to the next level with
This is not a
in-depth
part of it,
feedback on things
obviously.
like vocabulary,
for us to have Kim
And I'm
in
gonna
an
start it over.
independent environment.
1 second.
The program came about as an opportunity for us to have Kim in an independent environment, and that's something that we pretty much wanted for her.
We had built an apartment upstairs in our home, so she got the feel of what it's like to be responsible. So when this opportunity came, we were ready to grab it.
I like being safe in here with my roommate and my broken cars. I really like him very much. He's one of my favorite.
What does he like about you?
Well, he likes me the way I am.
The mission of the Connecticut Department of Developmental Services is to partner with individuals and their families to create meaningful opportunities for individuals to fully participate as valued members of their communities.
I think she really loves the independence. At first, I didn't know how independent she really could be, how she would grow in this environment.
The goal of supportive housing is to create an apartment community where people with and without intellectual disabilities can live in community together, where it feels natural for everybody that lives there. Individuals who move into these apartments quickly call their new apartment their home. And when their parents call them up and ask them if they want to come home to the family home, they quickly have different perceptions of what home is. And that's disappointing to the families. And yet at the same time, you know, they're super encouraged that this is working.
We still have to be an active role in her life. So we're here often, taking her to doctor's appointments for it, grocery shopping to make sure that she's buying the appropriate things. But besides that, we love coming and she loves having us, so I think.
So if a family wants to be there every day for the first 2 weeks or the first 2 months or the first 2 years, they can. We have some families that stop by every day. We have other families that do it for a couple of weeks and then they back off. We have some families that rarely come over because they value the independence that their adult children have and want.
I like being my own. I like my roommate. We do stuff together and, you know, chores done. And we like living here. I am safe in here.
Challenge Kimberly, give her the right tools and challenge her and give her the right support. And I know she can do it. I'm really proud of her.
One of the things that we see often is a parent's reaction that they're super pleased and surprised at how quickly somebody adapts to the new apartment. And at the same time, they're disappointed at how quickly they don't want to come back to the family home.
You know, as parents too, sometimes you have to look at the best interests of the child. You have to let go. You know, it's just, you know, one of those things where daddy's little girl didn't want to see her go.
The Connecticut Department of Developmental Services offers a variety of support to help individuals live as independently as possible in places where they can use their personal strengths, talents, and passion. Visit our website to learn more.
What did you guys think? Yay! I'm so glad we got to see that. And I hope you're continuing to share them. Thank you, Gunnar, for putting those in the chat. Next week, we are launching community companion homes. So look forward to that next week. And just a couple more. Oh, go ahead, Michael.
Michael Bella, parent. I think it's a great video. And I think there are going to be lots of families who are going to want that. And I think there needs to be information about how families get that and how funding gets attached to that, where they're located, and how it's available. I think those are the things that a parent who does not have residential funding at this time, who has a child who is in their 20s or 30s, they're going to want to know how they get it. And I hope that there's information associated with these videos that informs them how they qualify, when they qualify, and how they can get access to it, and where those types of apartments are located. That's all.
This is Lauren Gray from DDS. We don't have any of that right now. I'll take that into consideration. Right now, like we're really just directing people to case managers to ask more information because that really is the best place to start having those conversations. And we're trying to make people aware of STEP and the core supports of this program and show that this is possible for so many people who have not seen these support options or who have not even seen examples of people that they love in these type of supports. But thank you for that feedback. And like I said, this is Lauren Gray from DDS, just a couple more things, and then I will move right along on the agenda. We looked at our Facebook page, please keep sharing and liking on Facebook and Instagram. Speaking of Instagram, we did launch an Instagram last week with these options just as another way to connect to people. So we do have a new Instagram account. Please give us a follow. We'll continue to share information here. And we're continuing to share information over email and text messages. If you're on the DDS website on any page, you can click in the gray box on the left, subscribe for e-updates. And you can subscribe to our monthly newsletter and our text messages. We sent out our first text message last week. It was opened by 98% of individuals who are signed up for text, which was really cool. And the newsletter continues to do over well with over 50, usually between a 50 and 60% open rate. So these are really good methods of communication that, we're sending out information through. And if you haven't seen, I was going to show like an example of what one of our emails looks like. So last week we sent out one announcing the video series that had the video directly embedded in, as well as highlighting the 7 core support. So encourage people to continue to receive information in that way. And I think that was it, unless I missed something. That's really, we're working on quite a few things, and we're in the process of, finishing out the video series, and look forward to continuing to launch more of the STEP video supports. And the next thing that we're working on in the STEP series is some items and materials to accompany what we already have that highlight how STEP supports those with more comprehensive or significant needs. I know that's been feedback in almost every single meeting that we've had. So we're working on materials that explains how STEP supports those with more comprehensive needs. So look forward to more STEP information coming soon.
Lauren, this is Peter. How you doing?
Hey, Peter.
Could you, and I don't know if Betsy was going to talk about it with you, but could somebody talk about the case management forums that we're doing, so that to give the advisory committee a heads up with that?
Yeah, this is Lauren Gray from DDS. I'll briefly explain, and Betsy would love your help here. So we, over the summer, we did a series of STEP trainings with staff and case managers. And one of the pieces of feedback we received was that that case managers did still want support and more information and trainings on STEP, and what resources are available. And we already host a is it still weekly TA for providers, Betsy, right? Yes.
Yes.
So there's a weekly technical assistance office hour with providers. And so we decided to do a monthly case manager training and office hour where people can where case managers can come attend and ask questions about STEP, the resources, and anything else. But Betsy, I'll let you take it from here.
This is Betsy Bella with Deloitte. Just to build on what Lauren said, the goal is in these monthly sessions to open with a little bit of a presentation just to sort of let people settle in. And also because we've seen on the, not to jump ahead, but we've seen on the provider side, people often come in just sort of wanting to listen. But to really, regardless of what the topic is, allow for open Q&A, make sure people have that opportunity to be heard and to ask questions. DDS will also be tracking the questions that are asked to potentially update the case manager FAQ as needed. So the first topic will be what STEP is and what STEP isn't, to help really create some of that clarity on some of the misunderstandings we've heard and seen around STEP, both in terms of coming from, and I think a lot of it's gotten better, but some of the earlier ones and some that you still see some of, both for within case managers themselves and also to better inform them so that as they're talking with individuals and their families, they're really well supported to be able to answer those questions and sort of help people understand things like we're not trying to make people move who don't want to move. We're not closing all the group homes, right? So we have seen through the different training pieces that Lauren mentioned that the case managers, they show up and they are ready to chat. So we think these could be really large case manager office hours. And so we have some plans in terms of, rather than a free-for-all kind of going topic by topic, letting people chime in, ask their questions, receive their answers. These will be led by regional staff, case manager supervisors, assistant regional directors, really making sure that there is that strong regional representation within the meetings. And part of the purpose of having these across regions rather than within individual regions is to build further consistency across the state. And the hope is that over time, case managers will start to bring not just questions, but more updates on things they're seeing and pieces that are happening. And if someone has a question, it doesn't have to necessarily come down from leadership. Another case manager might have had a similar experience that they can then share to create more opportunities for sort of step and connections across the state.
Thank you, Betsy.
Of course.
This is Keith Lavalette at DDS. Lauren, are you all set?
Yeah, that was all that I had. If anyone has any questions, I'll stay on for a few more minutes. And thank you so much for sharing, all of our updates and our STEP initiative items.
All right, Keith Lavalette, DDS, seeing no questions come up yet. Betsy, you're on next with the Deloitte presentation.
Hi, I'm Betsy Bella from Deloitte. Our update today, we just covered case manager office hours, but we wanted to let you all know that we have at DDS request developed sort of we're calling it the STEP incentives cheat sheet. So especially with the Appendix K, the new Appendix K being approved, there's new incentives, there's the old incentives. And so this is just a table that lays out all of the residential and day incentives, quick descriptions of each, and then information on how they're calculated. And then on the back, we've gone ahead and also listed the non-step, but the training incentives available through the recently approved Appendix K, since a lot of providers are interested in using them together, which we greatly encourage. So the goal is that this will be helpful for providers and DDS staff alike to get that kind of quick look at available incentives all together. That way you don't have to dig through the budget sheets, you don't have to look in the step guide. It is really high level though, and so for that sort of ongoing detail, it references people over to the step guide. So that'll be coming out soon. There's just, anything like that's got to go through a couple of layers of review to make sure everybody's on the same page. And then it'll go up on the ARPA page within the provider gateway. So we are continuing to hold technical assistance sessions, as Lauren mentioned. They are currently alternating mornings and afternoons on Tuesdays. And then we're regularly having 2 or more agencies represented. Right now, we're seeing a lot of folks that have kind of general questions. They're trying to get the lay of the land. Maybe somebody else from their agency has been working on it and they're coming in and trying to get caught up. And we are also meeting with some folks one-on-one to help move some of that initial thinking into planning. People are continuing to say they're helpful. We've also had some providers who have approved plans that are in implementation joining these office hours just to listen in. When possible, we try to use those opportunities to support providers to learn from each other. Actually, this morning it was really great. We had a provider who's in implementation mode, and they were able to, talk through some things they've done and also sort of share that, because today's topic was in reinvesting your STEP incentives. And they were able to share that message of, beyond what you're putting into the transitions themselves, you will likely have additional incentives left over. And they shared some of their initial thinking there, but that point of you can get your plan in and your plan approved without figuring out every single detail, as we encourage providers to, really build on momentum and get rolling with their plans in so that they can start supporting people to transition. And to that point, we would like to see more and broader participation in these office hours. We're seeing lots of repeat folks, which is great. But we would like to see spreading out a little bit further. And so we wanted to ask you all if you might have any suggestions on increasing participation. You know, are there, we've gone out through Everbridge, there's been a calendar invite sent through Everbridge so people can add it on their calendars. We have the TA calendar that's regularly sort of socialized. But if you know of, mechanisms that you've seen help get provider interest and connection in the past, or if you are a provider and you're like, well, this is why I'm not coming, would love to hear any of that kind of feedback folks might have.
Come on, Wayne, you can give us some suggestions, right?
How did you know I was going to turn my microphone on? So whenever it's the Arc of Connecticut, I guess I just want questions to sort of get perspective. What kind of stage are the providers in? Is it a mix across the continuum from just submitting plans to people that are beginning to actually implement plans? And for the latter group, are any sort of outcomes available that could be de-identified or whatever in terms of numbers? I think that would potentially help. Also, can somebody go to office hours not having filed a plan? I think that there might be a perception out there that the office hours are only for people that have filed a plan. So I haven't seen the communications, but just make sure that it's clear that if you have any questions about STEP, you might want to use that facility to get them answered.
Betsy Bella from Deloitte. Thank you, Wynn.
Keith Lavalette, DDS. Barry, I see your hand up.
Yeah, so playing, I guess, off of Wynn, just to again reiterate, our experience has been very positive. My staff have been working and communicating around developing, I'm going to call it an agency transformation, where some parts of the agency are staying as is, and then we are proposing new kinds of services that are going to give people more options and serve more people for the same money or more people for less money. So it ends up being a win-win. One example you guys all heard me say is that if we're able to implement an ACT team, you could serve 35 people for the same amount of money as you could run one group home. And it will give people a choice and serve a different level of need that doesn't exist in the system right now. And so we're just talking back and forth about that possibility, and if it is acceptable to be going into a plan as a pilot / promising practice kind of an initiative. So it really is transformation discussions with the department, and they've been very positive.
It's Betsy Bella from Deloitte. Thank you, Barry.
Keith Lavalette, DDS. Michael?
Michael Bella, parent. Betsy, how many agencies are participating in these calls and how many agencies are not? Because I would imagine for those agencies who have not submitted a plan and are not participating, that these meetings might be even more helpful. Because even if they're not going to be submitting a plan, they're still going to have to transform their residential services, because going forward, there's going to be a different paradigm for how new people get funded And again, I apologize for keep bringing up new people. I know the primary purpose of STEP is to move existing folks into who have residential funding into new types of environments. But this drastically affects people coming through the pipe who are looking for residential services and what that will look like going forward as opposed to traditional group homes.
This is Betsy Bella from Deloitte. It's interesting you raised that because we have actually had more than one provider agency reach out to us who currently doesn't serve anyone. They're new providers, they're building their programs. And so we've been able to have some of those conversations about them about like, let's make sure you set up for the new paradigm. And then coming back to some of Wynn's questions, most of the providers participating have not submitted a plan yet. They are in the process of developing their plan. Just we have started to see some of the ones in implementation come back. At least in the, because we always ask them like, got an update, but in the group calls, they have not been very forthcoming about kind of their progress, which that's fair, that's fine. But I like the idea of being able to share out some de-identified outcomes, maybe in the next newsletter, at least on the provider side, could be interesting. And then Michael, really interesting point about encouraging people to engage who are not planning to submit a plan, because that might also give us an opportunity to encourage them to do so, help them figure out where it might fit into what they are doing, or to sort of reiterate this messaging of this is the direction things are headed, and this is an opportunity to be part of that direction, and you might need to get there eventually one way or another, so why not do it now?
Peter?
Betsy, you also had gone back to some of the providers that attended the trainings in June and surveyed them. Do you have those results of those surveys close to you?
So we did not get, this is Betsy Bella from Deloitte. I can pull them up. We did not get as many responses as we were hoping in the survey. But we were able to follow up with a few of them regarding, coming back into the office hours. Something where we're seeing more success is recently we have decided to follow up with folks who did access technical assistance previously and then who we haven't heard from. And in a lot of cases, it's because they have been taking pieces back, working through them, and are now ready to come back. So that's exciting. We've been able to then have some of those conversations around those. This is the wrong survey. But in terms of the people who had sort of so the survey was very much a you attended the training, are you planning to submit a plan? And many of the folks who did respond were interested. We were able to set technical assistance and start conversations with them. But overall, we were really hoping for more folks to fill it out. So there has been I'm glad Peter raised though, some of what we have been doing in terms of trying to build more interest is more of that targeted outreach. So things like, hey, we talked to you in technical assistance, or hey, you filled out the survey last November saying you were interested in STEP, and then we didn't get a plan from you. How can we help you get that plan in? And so we're seeing some from there, but who we'd really love to reach are some of those providers who maybe haven't been as engaged in STEP. Some of those people who don't even, who have less of an understanding of what it is or what the opportunities are.
Keith Lavalette, DDS, Wynn?
Hi, Wynn Everts, the ARPA Connecticut. Betsy, I have a question for you. Is there any sense yet how long sort of a typical, and nothing's typical, I understand, but a typical cookie cutter type of plan is going to be, once it's not sort of new discovery on what an agency wants to do. Say they're going to close down 3 more restrictive settings and open up 4 less restrictive settings. The whole machination of that is going to take how long?
This is Betsy Bella with Deloitte. We don't have an estimate on those timeframes. I mean, I
Okay.
think part of it very much is there's this emphasis on making sure that individuals can move on timelines they're comfortable with. There's the complications of helping people to find affordable housing, or to connect to competitive integrated employment. There are plans that are up and running, right, where people, there's been, I think, one of the early plans to be approved was a residential plan, and like immediately after approval, they had someone transition because after they'd submitted the plan, that person was looking for an apartment. Actually, before they submitted the plan, they were looking for an apartment, and then they found an apartment. We're like, oh, we better get this plan in quick. And so I think the person might have actually moved before they had final approval, which is fine, right? Once you start those conversations with a region, people can really move in motion. Where the timeline question becomes complicated is as we get closer to that March 2025 date, which is when the federal guidance is the ARPA funds have to be spent. And so as people are thinking about things like, oh, do we launch a project search? It's like, how quickly do you think? Because you have to sort of start them in September, right?
Yep.
And so that's where we're starting to see some of the conversations. Or there's a provider who's interested in working with a developer on a supportive housing project, but they haven't broken ground yet. So it's like, how quickly can you get that built? Let's please build things people want to live in, not something that you throw up overnight. So this is very much a non-answer, but it comes back to in your question yourself, right? There's no cookie cutter. And I think that that's important, but as it's going to become more complicated as we get closer to that March date.
Yeah, the March date was actually what I was probably looking for.
That's Eva from Deloitte, which isn't to say that providers couldn't start with a plan today, get it in motion and complete it. It's just they have to be thoughtful about what mechanisms they are using and kind of where people are already at in their readiness.
This is Keith Lavalette, DDS. Anything else, Betsy?
Yes.
Okay.
Great. Betsy Vella from Deloitte. So thank you all. And then we wanted to update you also on the STEP implementation plan. You've heard us mention it a couple of times. You might remember the STEP plan. You all had a chance to see it and review it. So this takes the pieces from the STEP plan and lays them out with sub-steps. And it also includes specific individuals at DDS who are taking responsibility for each piece. This is to make sure that things move forward. It's also because Peter and Gunnar can't do everything by themselves. So at the end of August, we heard some updates on items in motion, and everything's on track and some things are even ahead of schedule. I wanted to highlight just a couple of the pieces. Some of this might be items you've heard already in previous updates, but it doesn't hurt to hear again. DDS is making great progress in coordinating with the Bureau of Rehabilitative Services to make benefits counseling more accessible to people who receive supports. They're in progress, strengthening connections and outreach to improve awareness of Project Search. The case management team is working in on re-emphasizing the Charting the Life course tools, especially focusing on integrating natural supports into individual planning discussions. There's been a lot of progress on the assistive technology and remote supports efforts. For example, collecting information on what is currently most used in the state and creating documents to lay the groundwork for expanding information and availability. The AT&Me training, this is an example of something that started before the STEP plan was finalized, but it's being tracked as part of it and it's been rolled out. The initial implementation plan included some proposed measures We're meeting over the next few weeks with the people at DDS who are working on these efforts to confirm data sources and select specific measures that can then be used to monitor progress and the impact of the activities in STEP. So I know we get really focused on the provider side of it all, and that is hugely important. I'm glad we're talking about it, but we wanted to give an update too on some of the pieces DDS is doing a little more behind the scenes to try to make the environment as a whole much more focused on supporting individuals to be in the least restrictive setting of their choice, to have enhanced independence, and for there really to be more options. Any questions, comments? Okay, that's it for me.
All right, thank you, Betsy. Okay, on the agenda, next up is the update from committee co-chairs. Peter, you're first with the residential transformation, but did you want to use this time to just talk about the committees in general?
Yeah, so we've been having discussions at DDS, and for the working committees, when they were set up, the structure was that they would be working on a set group of activities and charges. And for the most part, they've all reached those targets and reached those activities. And so as such, the committees will be ending as of December of this year. We're going to make the advisory committee will be remaining through the ARPA period, because this is to advise the department on the Hill and ARPA initiative. So this will be staying, together. We're looking at the two engagement committees. We'll be looking at how they can maybe reconstitute themselves come after the first of the year, to see how that can be worked to make sure that we get such valuable input from the individuals and families group, how that we can continue that going forward. We're looking at how do we make sure that we get the input from our staff in terms of communication with the staff as well. So while the committees may be formally ending, we're going to try to figure out how to keep them going once the first of the year is over. But we wanted to let you guys know that there'll be an informal notice going out sometime this week, but we wanted to give a heads up to the advisory committee. So I don't know if anybody has any questions on that. So then I'll go right into the residential, which we've been, the residential has basically come into now an update of what's happening. And we've tried to prod, we've tried to encourage, are there any other things that we need to address? And we haven't been able to get anything. So at the meeting, at the residential committee, when we talked to them, they were all in agreement that our committee, we had our last meeting for our committee. The other committees will go through December, but the residential seemed that they're comfortable with what where we're at this point. So I'm not going to give you an update in terms of what the updates were, because I'll be giving you guys that update later on. So it's basically the same thing, but that we've been basically been an updating committee at this point.
Thank you, Peter. This is Keith Lavalette at DDS. The Day Transformation Committee is next, which is myself, and we met in the beginning of September. And again, we were much like the residential committee, mainly giving updates. And one of them is from Trevor Rogers on the Seln Commission. And he basically gave the update that actually October is National Disability Employment Awareness Month. He talked about the incentives for the ASPE and ACRE and customized employment training that is an incentive through STEP and it's up to $3,000. And that also includes the cost of the training. DDS has released a transportation survey to providers regarding transportation. The goal is specific for individuals with disability to get more information about transportation in Connecticut. They are also developing a one-time incentive guide that has been rewritten and is a resource that explains each specific piece, the funding availability, and an FAQ section. Connecticut customized employment certification courses for FY24, with 2 of the sessions will begin this calendar year. And the state will be accepting 22 provider staff members in each session. And then finally, DDS is developing its final report with a review of the final set of recommendations. And then I gave an update on the transformational initiatives, but Peter will be giving that later on in the meeting. And next is the DDS Engagement Committee, and I guess that's you again, Peter.
Yeah, so the committee met last week. A lot of it was regarding, at that point, we had done a viewing party of the in the videos. And so a number of number of regions had get-togethers at their office. And it was also online, trying to promote this in-house as to this is what we're doing. And then we came up, that's why we're doing this now, by each one coming out separately, trying to keep the momentum with the videos. Talked about the case management training forums, and there were a couple other things that were talked about, but I was in the parking lot as my wife was getting cataract surgery, and I've never heard rain pour so loud in my life, so I kind of missed a lot of the meeting because I kept hearing this rain pouring and pouring, and just as it comes off, I'd hit nothing. It was didn't get a whole lot out of that committee. So just so you know, so basically that was about it, Keith.
All right, thank you, Peter. Keith Lavalette, DDS. Finally, we have the individual family engagement, and either Shannon or Greg.
This is Shannon Giacovino, the DDS Ombuds person. We met last Monday on the 14th, and we also talked about the future of our committee and some of the thoughts we had about continuing. I think both the committee and DDS agree that the feedback of the committee has been very helpful in this process, particularly around communications. And so Greg and Dr. Ellis and Lauren and I have met to kind of put together a suggested plan for how to continue to have this committee be a good source of feedback for DDS, but also be a good source of information for DDS on, sort of information that's happening in the community or issues that are being raised in the community that DDS needs to be made aware of. So more on that coming. We had a communications update. Lauren pretty much covered everything that she covered in the meeting and more. There was a recommendation that in the upcoming meetings with Commissioner Sheff and Deputy Commissioner Velardo, that just the instructions for how to participate are like repeated and made more clear to people. I think there was maybe some confusion for some people around. They weren't able to unmute themselves and they didn't really know how to participate. And there was some concern that maybe all of the questions in the chat weren't being answered. And so, Lauren took that feedback and I think we'll incorporate that in the upcoming meetings. Deloitte gave an update which covered most of what Betsy covered today. And there were some questions from the committee about whether or not there was, like, what kind of data collection was being done for individuals who are participating in the plans, if we're collecting information on age and gender and race and other kinds of demographics, and that maybe it would be useful for us to do that. And so I don't think that information is being collected right now, but we had a discussion and said, Greg and Lauren said they would bring it back. There were also some questions in terms of whether or not individuals and families were being made aware of and included in the planning prior to the plans being presented. And so, that was all clarified for people that, part of the planning process includes having to show how you're engaging individuals and families. And I think that was just about it for that. And then there was also questions from several people in the committee about the waiting list and how STEP impacts people who are waiting for services. And so we've reached out to maybe, to get someone from within the agency to talk to the committee about it. But I think that, and Michael has raised this as well, that I think there needs to be some connection to people out there who are waiting for services about they're getting all this great information. And so how does that affect me and my family if I'm not necessarily a part of this ARPA phase? So we're going to be covering that in our next meeting. And that was it.
Thank you, Shannon. Keith Lavalette at DDS. Any questions for any of the committee co-chairs? All right, seeing none, the next agenda item is the update on transformational initiatives. Peter.
Okay, so right now, as everybody knows, we have 12 plans that have been approved. And at our last meeting, I believe, Keith, did I get this number right? I believe 7 individuals have moved to date. Is that the right number?
No, I think it's 13 individuals.
Thank you.
7 and I think it's 7 in residential, 6 in day, or the reverse. I forget which way it goes.
Great, thank you. I knew I had that number and somehow it didn't register with me. But I think going back to Shannon's point about looking at the geographics or the demographics of it, of the individuals and stuff, that's something that we can bring back to Sarah, our fellow governor's fellowship. She's been doing a lot of the data for us and working on outcomes and the data for the outcomes of each of our initiatives. So maybe we can talk to her as to how we can get keep up with the placement people and who's been placed and get the demographics for that. So if we could bring that up at our next meeting, Keith.
Sure.
We have one plan that's gone through the final, one new plan that's gone through the final approval. I'm not too sure if a letter's gone out yet, but I know that has been worked through, and I think they were supposed to be sending out that letter this week, so we'd be up to 13 plans. We also have another plan that was submitted within the region, and the region's been working with that provider. It's more of a planning type document versus having individuals involved. So I know that they're working to see if they can come up with something that could be a little bit of both, having individuals involved and allow the agency also to help plan people to move. We have 4 agencies that have told the agency they will be submitting a plan shortly. And we have 2 agencies that are that have existing plans that have said that they want to expand those plans. So we do have some movement. It's not as much as I wanted to. And I think with that, those agencies are all different than the ones that gone to the TA sessions. So hopefully between all that, we'll start getting more to come in. I don't think we're going to have the big onslaught of the 12 agencies when we started. I think it's going to be more dribs and drabs as they come in, which is great. That means they're doing their due diligence and they're working through their programs and stuff. I don't know if anybody has any questions on that. So what I wanted to go through is
Peter, we do have a question. Win?
Yes. Go ahead, Win.
I'm sorry, I couldn't find the thing fast enough, Peter. Win Everts, the ARC Connecticut. For the plans that are being expanded, is it going to, when people do that, are they allowed to slightly modify the plan, or does it have to conform to what's originally proposed?
I'm trying to understand the question. So we're working. Go ahead.
Yeah, so let's say that it's a residential plan and people are being moved from CLAs to supportive housing. And as that occurs, maybe somebody decides that they want to move people from CLA to a community companion home, additional things. In other words, there might be a increase in the interest in going to less restrictive settings. Will that cause an entire sort of reevaluation of the plan or not?
No, at this point in time, it won't. It will be if the two that we're talking about, they're adding another. One's adding, I think they're both including two CRS. One's having a CRS and another one's having a CRS, and they're going to be moving those individuals out of the CRS. So that's not going to change the fundamental of the plan. If they're going to add a day program to the residential, that then kind of changes the fundamental piece of it. And then we'll work with the provider that may be, okay, why don't we just have you submit a second plan and put plan A and plan B. We don't want to make this burdensome in terms of paperwork. So we're going to work with the provider and stuff like that. And, and I say that this is it's an all easy process now, because we, don't have a whole lot of plans. But if we start getting a whole lot of plans, for people to expand what they have may become a bigger deal, because at that point depends how much money we have reserved, whether we're starting to run out of money in terms of that. And at that point, then there would have to be some kind of more of a formal process as to, okay, let's look at what you're doing. Are we going to be looking at that as more of a positive versus another agency jumping in? And so I think right now it's easy, but I think come down, if things go according to plan, at some point it could become more of a formal process in order to make sure that we don't overspend the money that we have that we've assigned.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you very much.
So one of the things I want to do, because we haven't done this in a while, is to talk about the different ARPA initiatives. I know we always talk about the transformation piece, but we have other initiatives that we're doing. And so I'm going to go through some of those. As we've talked about a little bit already, one of the initiatives is to increase the amount of assistive technology being used. We issued an RFP over the, I believe the summer. We've are now working, we've awarded those contracts or awarded those awards. We're now working on the contract. We have one agency that's going to be doing the north and south, and that agency is Oak Hill. We have one agency that just wanted to do the Fairfield County, and that's Star. And then a third agency then will do the rest of the West region, and that would be Midstate ARC. So right now we're working through the contracting piece of it. And in between that, we're now looking at the processes that goes involved with that in terms of how does the referrals work, how does it work with Pratt and all that stuff, so that our estimate is that this will be up and running hopefully January 1st. All depends on the contract getting done and then getting that approval through the Attorney General. We're hoping it's quicker than that, but my guess is it's probably going to be somewhere around that date. We're looking at one of the things that we've done in terms of increasing education for our staff in terms of assistive technology is to we did a application for going to a AT certification program, and we've worked with a university out of California. So we have 100 staff that have signed up for this. It's a, Keith, is it a 10-week program? I want to say a 10-week program. Do you remember?
I think it is.
Yeah, the 10-week program, and they have work that they have to complete. And once they do that, they'll get a certification. So DDS is paying for that. And you know, our goal is to get as many DDS staff as possible to be aware and familiar with assistive technology. We're looking at we've issued out notice of opportunities for individuals and families. This is our third one for assistive technology equipment. We have another one out there for providers as well. We're looking at trying to set up a lending library within DDS, and we're starting to gather the equipment. We're also trying to set up lending lockers so that we'll have them in the different regional center or regional offices that people can come and take the equipment out of there and then bring it back. So just trying to get as many individuals to be able to use and utilize and practice with assistive technology. We do have an assistive technology remote support consultant that's coming on board. Should be starting up hopefully in October to help us in terms of better utilizing assistive technology and remote supports. We talked about the AT&Me. AT&Me is that a program where individuals learn about assistive technology, and the initial 200 who get trained will train a couple of other people that they do. So the total amount that we have is about 600 people that we're looking at out in the community. So, you know, we're always looking at how to increase the number of people. So if you have people in your programs or know of people, then I would suggest that you talk to Patricia Cimbala, who's our assistive technology director at this point. And I think those were the major initiatives for assistive technology.
Peter, this is Keith Lavalette.
Yep.
You have a question from Michael.
Yep, Mike.
You're on mute, Mike.
Sorry about that. Michael Beloff, parent. Two quick questions on assistive technology. Was there given thought to, rather than DDS setting up its own lending library, would there be a way to leverage the the Assistive Technology Training Center of Connecticut, which already has a lending library and has a small, I think the fee to join is like $100 if you're an organization, maybe as a way of saving resources to leverage what they've already set up.
Yeah, we've kind of we're obviously we're not going to have an extensive, but what we're trying to do is to make it available to everybody so that they can get to it. And that's why we were trying to do some of the regions to try to get as close to as many people as possible. It's, you know, once again, the more we can get out there, the more chances we have. And that's what we do. We know there are a number of them. We just don't know how close they are to the people that we serve or support, so that this kind of will hopefully get it there, and then the case manager will have it close to them as well, so that they can try to move the equipment out.
I guess my thought was just if the case managers could join, and
Yeah.
I think it's like $100 to join, and they have an infrastructure already set up, at least it should be explored to see kind of how we can leverage something already out there. The other question I had was more on a practical standpoint with assistive technology. If STAR is going to be kind of the remote monitoring section for Fairfield County, if there's an individual who's, say, served by the Kennedy Center, you know, how does that work? Because they're getting their services through there, but the monitoring through STAR, and how does that get
It's not
coordinated?
monitoring that. Yeah, it's not monitoring.
Oh, apologize then.
This contract is for individuals who are looking to receive an assistive technology assessment. So we're looking at a designated agency within the regions to assign, so that they would assess the individual. They then come up with recommendations. Those recommendations that didn't get approved by the Pratt go back to that same vendor, who would then purchase the equipment and train the staff, trying to do an all one place shopping, so that we can kind of grease the wheel.
And I think that's great to have that centralized per region. Great. Yep. Thank you.
Keith Lavalette, DDS, Barry.
Thanks, Kit. Barry, Simon O'Kill. I guess along the same lines, I was just going to offer you up, since we have a lending library and we do the lending library for birth to 3 as well. We have processes in place. There's no $100 membership fee. There's just 2-story, you know, lending library already set up. So whatever we can do to be helpful for you to replicate what we're already doing, I'm happy to help.
That'd be great. Thank you. Any other questions on assistive technology? Okay, I'll move on to our next initiative. Our next initiative is about the enhance the workforce for individuals who self-direct. So we had set up, we had issued a contract with Rewarding Work. They have now set up an employment network website where individuals that are looking for staff could set up their job postings, and individuals who are looking for jobs could set up their could put their resumes. Then there's a matching piece to this, so that would try to help the families to be able to match staff. They're doing well. They've been putting advertisements out there, but right now we're on the, which is kind of strange to say this, but we're on the opposite end, is that we have 5 staff to 1 opening, and that's kind of a lot. So we're trying to encourage more of the families who self-direct to start participating in the employment network. And so we're looking at that. In addition, we're also have ongoing talks with DSS in terms of establishing a website that would be for both DDS and DSS individuals that self-direct. There's been a lot of negotiations with our sister agency. We seem to be getting closer to the final result. The RFP that we have has already been written. We're just have a couple more issues that we need to resolve The hope was that it would be issued on October 1st, but now we're probably looking at September 1st. I mean, November 1st. Sorry about that. No questions on that. Okay, we'll go to the next one.
Peter, this is Keith Lavalette. We do have a question. Shannon?
Yes, Shannon.
Hi, Peter. This is actually about the rewarding work, or the staff or people who self-hire. I don't know if it's appropriate for this forum or maybe somewhere else, but it'd be really helpful to understand how that works. I don't have a picture in my head of what that system is, or how people are. I just don't have any idea of what it looks like. And so, like I said, I don't know if maybe this isn't the right place, but
I
I'd
think
love
it's a
to
good,
know more about that.
yeah, no, I think it's a good place to start. And Keith, maybe we can talk to Dan, and maybe Dan can give like a presentation of what the rewarding work contract or website looks like.
Yeah, I can talk to him and see if we can get on for the October meeting.
Yeah, I mean, even if it's somebody from rewarding work wants to go through it, I think that'd be great for people to see.
Great, thank you.
Yep. Let's see what else we got. The outcome-based incentives, this is as part of our proposal to CMS, was to look at the possibility of DDS establishing an outcome payment-based incentive program more on a broader scale that would encompass quality and quality monitors and indicators. Deloitte had come up with a report that was accepted, and is now DDS has that. We just had our CFO Scott left, and so now Nick has taken over, or Nick is now got a lot on his mind, so he's got that in the back of his head, that's something he has to go back to see where that would look, what would that look like in terms of DDS, and look at what the recommendations are. So this one's kind of on hold until we can see where we're at. Probably 4 or 5 months before he can actually get to it and see, what, if anything, DDS wants to do with that. Let's go. The supportive housing, we have established a new RFP that for non-project based supportive housing. That went out, I think, earlier this month. I think the closing is sometime in October. We're looking at, we did this already with 3 agencies, and we want to try to replicate it. How we've done in supportive housing in the past has been by starting from scratch. So working with the builder from scratch, then it gets built. And that usually takes somewhere between 18 months to 2 years for completion. So there's a long lag time to this. What we started in the first round was to look at other existing apartment complexes where the owner or property manager would be willing to work with us to establish a supportive housing program within those existing complexes. And so we know we have a couple that's working on that we awarded in the fall or earlier this spring. And now we've got another RFP out there. Hopefully we'll get more providers that are looking to do this to be able to expand supportive housing. So when individuals who do have funding and they want to go into that model, we have enough space available for them to go into it. Let's see what else we got.
Peter, we have a question from Cheryl.
Yep. Go ahead, Cheryl.
Hi, Peter. Thank you. I was just curious, and you may have answered this in your statement. Are we looking for new providers, additional providers who are not currently providing the service in those complexes, or are we looking for just individuals who already have existing relationships?
No, we're looking for providers that are already qualified. We're looking for them to be working with existing apartment complexes to establish supportive housing in those existing complexes. So once we have the space, then we can then look at individuals to fill those, to move there. But right now, we're trying to expand the number of opportunities for supportive housing. So instead of building it from scratch, we're seeing if we can use existing complexes out there. So that's what this is doing.
Thank you.
Let's see, where are we? We've been providing funding to providers for enhanced staffing, for infrastructure. And so one of the things that we're looking at doing is getting back from providers what they've been doing with all that money, and how they're using it. The idea for especially the enhancing staffing is looking at the strategies that providers have used to see if we can look at best practices, and be able to see how we can maybe replicate that, and whether DDS has additional funds that can help to create more of those, whatever the best practices are. We also have looking at the infrastructure funds and what people are using that. A lot of this stuff is we're trying to come up with ways that as we're looking at outcomes, what did people have this money? What are they using for? How are they working? What's that money gone to help their agencies and stuff? So those surveys have been out, and they're due, I think, coming up. Let's see. Critical incident. So we have a system we established a couple of years ago. It's called Pulse Light. And what that does is look at Medicare claims and hospitalizations, excuse me. Hospitalizations, and looking at critical incidents and incident reports to see if they all match. One of the things that we looked at is that we also wanted to see if there's attach that to the lawn levels, so that we can say is this happening more to individuals who have higher lawns, lower lawns, whatever. So that has just been updated, and that was put in. So that's the first piece to this. And that's just been updated and it's supposed to start sometime this week. And then there's some other updates that they're going to be doing to that, and I don't have them off the top of my head. We have we contracted with Yukon in terms of doing the NCI, the National Core Indicators Survey, that looks at quality indicators. We've done that in-house previously. This year it went out using the funding that we have to see if we had a third party do that, if we would be able to meet our targets, and get a good participation rate. And so that went through June, and the amount of people we were able to meet our target this year. It was the first time we've been able to do that in a couple of years. So that's good. We do know that there's some areas we need to be looking at in terms of quality, which we'll be able to work on. And so this will be another that we'll be also looking at next year to once again work with Yukon to do the NCI survey, and looking at more of how do we get some more data out of all those. So that's that piece. Another piece to this was to do the look at a new case management system. And this is kind of fell behind a little bit because we were dealing with our state partners in terms of what we could do. We ended up trying to go what's called an advanced planning document, which is working with CMS that helps us pay for like 90% of the cost. But in order to get there, we thought we could start that from the beginning. But in order to get there, we needed to actually do more research on our part. So consequently, we've now hired a project manager and a number of staff consultants to work with them. And the idea is they're now whittling down what is available. Our goal is to find something that's already in existence and not to do something on our own, because being an state employee and seeing how long it takes for the state to come together and build a program, it takes forever. So we're looking at what's out there, and I know they've narrowed it down they're looking at off-the-shelf programs, but they're also looking at states, and we had identified a number of states to look at, and right now they've narrowed down to 2 different states that have a case management system and what we're looking for. And they've done interviews with them initially, and now they're going to go into even more detail. And the hope is that out of those, they'll be able to find one that will meet most of DDS's needs. We know we're not going to hit everything, but if we hit most of it, then we can add to it at another date. So once that gets identified, yes, if you want to know the 2 states, it's Delaware and Hawaii that I know of right now. So once we have identified that the program, we'll then go back and work with CMS for the APD, and that will then help us to purchase and implement the program. I don't have the details on what exactly is in each of these, because that's what our consultants will do. Once we do that, I'll have a better idea of what actually is inside those. And lastly is we have the universal assessment. And so the initial idea for this, if I can get this, the initial idea was that we were going to work with DSS, determine what issues that we needed to solve with the universal assessment, and then make those changes. Well, when we were doing our work with DSS, there was a number of issues that they was discovered in terms of the universal assessment that DSS needs to make some changes with. And DDS was trying to figure out how it was able to work through some of those. And it was really, it wasn't coming together. So now what we're trying to do is we're focusing on a planning component that's going to pull in a vendor that will assist us in road mapping the state's vision of what the universal assessment is for, so that we are trying to commit ourselves to it, but we want to make sure that it's going to do something that is in the best interest of the state and the best interest of DDS. So we want to make sure that if we're going to do this and the state's vision is that it's universal for all state agencies, then we need to try to figure out how do we bring all the agencies on board and come up with a tangible plan for that. So it's kind of warped between, it was just DDS doing it. We're trying to look at what needs to be done, and now we're looking at a broader thing as to what's the role, what is it that the state wants us to do, and then how we then would be able to fit in that with all the other state agencies. And I think that's it. Whew. We're working on a lot.
Keith Lavalette, DDS. Any questions for Peter?
Barry.
So Barry Simon Oak Hill, Peter, good to certainly know there's not much going on behind the scenes. And as far as that universal assessment goes, certainly as a multi-state agency provider, I get a little nervous. Is it all Health and Human Service state agencies, or which ones are participating?
Well, the original plan was everybody would be doing the same universal assessment, and it was part of the no wrong door approach. So DSS started that ball rolling. They took a lot of that stuff from the DDS lawn, but they also made other changes to it. And so the idea we on our end thought, okay, well, everybody else is jumping on board as well. And then come to find out there's other state agencies that weren't going to do this, had never planned to do this. And then when we looked at the matching of the lawn and, as we have our funding attached to the lawn levels, we have to make sure that those work at the same thing. It just became, well, this question here, and it got very complicated. Right. And so we decided with DSS to step back. They'll keep going in terms of making the changes that they know need to be changed. But also then to bring in a vendor to make it, all right, what is the state's vision and how does this fit in? Because I don't know if that's been looked at. I mean, it was a good concept 5-6 years ago. Who knows where we're at this point? So it's kind of taking a step back to make sure if it is a universal assessment, how does this work for everybody?
Yeah, it's a shame because certainly the population health data that could be collected would be remarkable. And I believe all the state agencies report up to the same boss. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it's amazing how they can choose not to participate.
Well, and I was amazed that while it's very familiar, there's still things in there that aren't quite match what DDS looks for. And, we wanted to we got to make sure if we're going to switch over that this is a seamless switch and not all of a sudden now, because of this question not being the same and then now all of a sudden funding drops or funding goes up high. We have to make sure that this all works out. And we just don't have a lot of comfort right now in that. So we're waiting we figure let's take a step back and just do this more in a planning process. So.
Thanks.
All right, this is Keith Lavalette at DDS. Hasn't happened in a while, but our meeting time has ended and I'm sure people have places to go. Our next meeting is 10/17/2023. And can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second? So Barry and Lynn. And all in favor?
Aye.
All right. Thank you, everybody. See